Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today for the Thursday, February 15th, 2024 Public Safety, Finance, and Strategic Support Committee. Before we get started, let me just read a statement that we do every meeting. Before we begin, I want to remind the Public Safety, Finance, and Strategic Support Committee members and members of the public to follow our code of conduct at meetings. This includes commenting on the specific agenda item only and addressing the full body. Public speakers will not engage in a conversation with the chair, council members, or staff. All members of the Public Safety, Finance, Strategic Support Committee, staff, and the public are expected to refrain from abusive language. Repeated failure to comply with the code of conduct, which will disturb, disrupt, or impede the orderly conduct of this meeting, may result in removal from the meeting. This meeting of the Public Safety, Finance, Strategic Support Committee will now come to order. Can the clerk's office please call the roll?
Chair Jimenez.
Present.
Vice Chair Duan.
Present.
Kamei. Here. Torres.
Here.
And Batra.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a quorum. First item is review of the work plan. Do we have any public comment on that?
I believe we have one card submitted. Let me just double
Okay.
check, make sure the items. That's for another item. We'll
Okay.
go back to the committee.
All right, perfect, okay. And actually, can you remind me, do we need a motion for review of the work plan? I'm not sure we,
I don't believe so.
okay, all right, perfect. We'll go on to consent calendar. There being nothing on the consent calendar, we'll move on to reports to committee, unless the public comment was on the consent calendar, but there's nothing, so we'll go on to D, reports to the committee. First up is card room status report. I think we have Sarah Sarate and Steve Stamos, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman Jimenez and committee members. My name is Sarah Sarate. I am the Director of the City Manager's Office of Administration, Policy, and Intergovernmental Relations. I'm here to provide you a verbal update on intergovernmental issues related to card rooms operating in the City of San Jose. To begin, I'll have to take you back to the last day of the legislative session in 2022, when a gut and amend bill was introduced to extend the state's cardroom moratorium that was about to lapse. The city and other key stakeholders, including the city's card rooms, were able to successfully defeat that legislation, the outcome of which meant that the cardroom moratorium lapsed on January 1st, 2023, creating a unique window of opportunity for the city's two card rooms, Bay 101 and Casino Matrix, to apply for an increase in card tables as approved by city voters in Measure H in 2020. The city's IGR team and lobbying teams in Sacramento engaged in extensive advocacy work on this issue last legislative cycle, as the lapse of the moratorium triggered both the opportunity for card rooms to apply for tables and, in parallel, a new bill, AB 341, to reinstate the moratorium. In regard to the increase in tables, the city supported the card rooms' applications and provided testimony at their hearings at the California Gambling Control Commission. Unfortunately, however, in April 2023, the Commission recommended the applications be denied, ultimately pointing to issues they contended existed with Measure H's ballot language not being substantially in compliance with Business and Professions Code Section 19961C, given the absence of any reference to a 1996 limit on tables. The city strongly disagrees with the Commission's interpretation. Again, in parallel to the card rooms seeking table increases, a new bill was introduced, AB 341. The city spent considerable time advocating to have an amendment added to this bill that, if included in its entirety, the city believed would address the issue with BP Code Section 19961C. An indicator of the magnitude of that lobbying effort is seen in the city getting half of its amendment included in AB 341. AB 341 was signed into law, and it reinstated the card room moratorium. More recently, in mid-July of 2023, another bill was introduced, SB 549, that again brought to the forefront issues with a Private Attorney General Act known as PAGA. This bill gives sovereign tribal governments a new PAGA-like private right of action to bring litigation challenging licensed games offered in California card rooms. If it becomes law, this could severely impact operations in the San Jose card rooms, putting jobs at risk and millions in city funding at risk. Ensuring this bill is defeated is a priority for the city and for the city's card rooms. The bill was referred to the Assembly Governmental Organization Committee, but does not yet have a hearing scheduled, although one is expected. On January 30th, our IGR team submitted to our delegation members a package of 8 letters opposing this legislation. And on February 5th, the City of San Jose and Bay 101 and Casino Matrix jointly met with delegation members in Sacramento to help educate and emphasize how damaging this bill would be both for the city and our card rooms, and specifically its potential impacts to jobs and city services. In addition, we have been directly engaging with Assembly GO Chairwoman Blanca Rubio, as well as the Card Room Alliance Coalition. As the session continues to take shape, we will continue to advocate in coordination with our card rooms to deliver a strong message in opposition to SB 549. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to take questions. Also, our card rooms are in the audience.
Thank you so much. We'll go to public comment and then bring it to the committee.
We have no public comment. Back to the committee.
Okay, there being no public comment, I'll bring it to the committee, and it seems like Councilmember Torres has his hand raised.
Great. Thank you so much for that presentation, verbal presentation, so thank you. So myself and Councilmember Duan, wow, that's really loud today. Myself and Councilmember Duan submitted a memo, and after having conversation with our city manager's office and city attorney, right, I've decided not to motion for my memo, or our memo, I should say, but I just want to let folks know that there still needs to be a sense of urgency regarding this topic. So that's why, for me, it was important to submit my memo. But we're all one team, and so I think we could all work together to figure out the kinks of my memo. And so that's why I'm making a motion, one, to withdraw my memo from myself and Councilmember Duan, and instead agendize it for the March PIS-FIS, So
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? Or Lee, please?
Just thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate that. And just offer maybe a path forward that's more direct. Looking at the memo, I would say obviously the administration has several concerns, starting with just the policy question. Do you want to change the regulations in general? And I think the full council needs to give direction around that before we arrive at a conclusion what that is. But ultimately, eliminating a card room regulatory fee is something that would need to happen through the budget process, because as proposed in this memorandum, it does create a general fund liability of anywhere between $1 million or $2 million. So I think if we were to come forward in the March PIS-FIS meeting, we're well into the budget process. And ultimately would still need to get referred to council to give us direction to even start examining this. So I would recommend that I don't think you guys can refer this as agendized, but you could certainly put forward this memorandum to the Rules Committee, which then could ultimately go to council and probably be heard before our next agendized PIS-FIS meeting. Because if it is something the council wants to grapple with, meeting the budget process in that June 2024 timeline would be tight if we give it another 4 weeks before it's even discussed.
Okay. Well, that's a a wrench in the
think it's just
in the
more-
process.
It's just a way for you to expedite it by sending it to rules so that you guys can have that question answered for you. Because the way we put the budget together is we'll obviously seek direction from you guys as part of the March message, but we're well into working with departments on how to balance
Okay.
those things. And so I want to make sure if you're really interested in this, that we have the ability and space to do that work versus kind of delaying it by 4 weeks.
So, may I ask a question, Mr.
Please.
Chair? So my question would be, so I get what you just explained, but, you know, as an elected official, when we talk about new revenue, then we start talking about the budget. But this is not new revenue. It's just because we are reconsidering. Is it because the memo is reconsidering the fees, or the way we intake those fees and the taxes? Is that why we need to go to budget?
Yeah, so anytime we're establishing a new fee or eliminating a fee, or even changing amending a fee, it does need to be considered through the budget process. That's what the budget balancing guidelines that you guys have passed to give us. And as written, and I'm sure we would need some space to kind of work through some of these questions, but while it talks about alignment to state regulations and removing duplicative regulations, it still seems like there's some type of function of regulation. But within the recommendation, it also talks about just eliminating the regulatory fee altogether, which means the council would need to contemplate putting general fund behind such regulations if there was no regulatory fee. So that's why it would need to happen within the budget process.
All right. So so do we have to amend the motion, or just kind of say everything what he said?
I guess I would ask the question of the city attorney, do we have the power just to refer this to the Rules Committee, or would they need to resubmit their memorandum to the Rules Committee?
I think PISVIZ can refer it to the Rules Committee, your memo as it is.
Okay. So I'll amend my motion to
Move it to?
for that language, that exact language. Yeah.
We'll move
I don't
it
want to
to
repeat
Rules
everything
Committee.
that you just said, but yeah, I think that.
So the seconders okay with that?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
cool.
All right. Any other comments? I have a question, but any other comments, thoughts? Okay, so,
Thank you, Lee.
thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Rabatra.
Yeah, I want to get a clarification on, you talked about the changes which happened. They pose a huge risk to our card rooms and to the revenue which we get and the employment. If we don't do anything what we're talking about here, are we in danger of not having any revenue beyond a certain amount of months?
Thank you, Council Member. I think it all depends what happens in Sacramento. The bill right now was referred to a committee, but it hasn't been scheduled for a hearing, and it has several steps after that. So it would depend if this bill actually became law, the impacts of, what it would mean for the city. There's a lot of additional steps that would have to happen.
Okay. And are we currently duplicating a lot of work with the state as a city of San Jose, and we are adding a value to it? In terms of Lee, probably you want to pick it up.
Yeah, so it's something that the assistant chief and I have asked the gaming ed division to do, is look at our own regulations and the state and kind of come up with a framework for us to look, knowing that this conversation was going to happen. I'm sure there are overlaps. We've had a very robust regulatory model that the state, quite frankly, has taken pieces of. So I'm sure there's some overlap, but how much or how little, I don't think we'd be prepared to answer that question today.
So where would be the right place to get that evaluation to happen, whether we need the kind, when we started now, this thing has been an evolution for a while, so we learn things. Sometimes we need to do certain things to start with, and then they become redundant because they become part of the system and the process. So what would be the right place to have that evaluation take place? That whatever we're currently doing, should we continue to do? Should we do more? Should we do less? Should we charge less? Should we not charge at all? What's the right place for that evaluation to happen?
It's a very good question, and I don't want to speak for the Rules Committee members because they haven't heard this yet, but traditionally when a proposal like this comes forward, in addition to just asking the administration, for a workload analysis, can this get done? Do you have the means to go ahead and research this? Rules Committee has given us direction when we have a memorandum that kind of comes to a conclusion, backing it up and asking for staff's recommendation, or if we were going to remove things, because I think you're absolutely right. The question of should we re-examine the regulatory framework is a good question, and without knowing what that framework is, what the state does and what we do, it is hard for you to make a decision. So I would imagine the Rules Committee would give us some type of direction when we come forward through the budget process to brief you all in some manner or fashion, so you have that.
Okay, so that's where we'll get the fair evaluation of what it should look like. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. We're going to go to Vice Mayor Kamei.
Thank you. I know that we were supposed to have a workshop on fees, and I'm wondering, is that going to occur? I know we always talk about, the evaluation of different fees and all of that. When is that happening? Because it seems to me that it would be appropriate to, as part of the discussion on fees, would that come together, or?
So the way the Rules Committee split up those study sessions, we're going to do the fee study session as part of the budget study sessions that begin in May. So that's once the proposed budget comes out. I recommended the rules route to Councilmember Torres
So this would
because
be
I think
earlier.
it's too late, really, once the proposed budget comes out, as Jim has kind of mentioned in some of them, like unraveling that is very hard. So if the council is interested in alternative service delivery here, it's something that we would probably do most of that work and come forward before.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
But it's an excellent question, though, because
Yeah.
that study session in May will look very different than what it has in the past because of the direction around fees and charges.
Yeah, okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just two questions. One is, Sarah, can you share sort of what your thoughts are? Obviously, I know a big bone of contention with the card rooms are just the tables that they never got because of the state laws and everything that's been happening. What would you estimate of the chances that they would actually be able to get those tables at some point? If you had to venture a guess.
I don't know that I would place any bets right now on that. What I will say is that those tables were denied back in April of 2023. Since then, the AB 341 has passed, and it does have what we call the San Jose Amendment built into it. And I don't know if the card rooms have applied since that bill passed to test whether that language will allow the increase in tables or not. I would have to ask that of the card rooms.
Okay. Is there anyone that maybe wants to chime in on that or share their perspective? Rob or?
Didn't know I was going to have to speak today. Good afternoon. Thank you for the question, and thank you for the report. On behalf of Casino Matrix, Bay 101, I don't believe is here. Oh, there. Oh, hello. They have an appeal going, so he might have a better understanding. We have applied for the tables twice, as indicated, and we did have one appeal, minor appeal, which we lost as a writ proceeding, and the indication was that the commission's decision that there would be no tables was, appropriate and final. And as I said, I won't speak for Bay 101, but there's been a further appeal of that. From my perspective, having dealt with the commission for a decade now, I think it's very, very unlikely. So, not taking any bets on it is a good answer. Does that help?
That does help. Thank you. And if Bay 101 representative has any thoughts.
Open for any other questions too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Gustin Whitson, General Counsel for Bay 101. The only thing I'll add in terms of the appeal that we're in our final stages there before a panel of 3 appellate judges. We have submitted our final briefing. The commission has submitted their final briefing. And currently we're looking to get a scheduling of oral dates on that, oral arguments. And my best guess or estimation would be 2 to 3 months. We'll have the oral argument dates, so then generally there's a 90-day timeline, essentially, that they can return a judgment on that. So we got some roadway ahead of us on that.
About 6 months out or so. to
Could
your
potentially,
decision or
could be.
something.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Have Bay 101 tested the AB 341?
No, we didn't test those waters yet, but I would venture to echo Mr. Lindo's sentiment regarding that. So,
Well, you don't know if you're going to have it until you try it, right?
what's that?
You don't know if the water is there unless you test it.
That's correct. Yeah, but currently we're pursuing our appellate route right now for the tables.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. And then the other question I had is it relates to rules. I don't think we specified which rules committee it would come to, like if it's next week or the week after or before a certain date. I mean, is there, just given the time of the budget process, it seems to me that maybe the sooner the better. And would it be helpful to say exactly what date we want it to come to rules, or Lee?
Yeah, I'm totally open to that. I do think because of the short runway here, the sooner the better. So,
Okay.
I think it's not a whole lot of us preparing for rules next week. I think we're just referring the memo there.
Okay.
And obviously there's, as I've said, we have concerns with the memo that we would need to work through with rules, but there's nothing for us to prepare. So it can be as
Okay.
early as next week if
Okay.
you guys want to give that direction.
I think it'd be helpful to see maybe as soon as possible, but no later than like the 28th of February.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's like 2 weeks out, but as soon as possible, but no later than that.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever you guys are open to, we are amenable.
Okay, and then, okay, great. I think the seconder, you're okay with that?
I'm okay with it.
All right. And then Lee, help me understand. So, I think it's safe to say that, I'm reading between the tea leaves. You and I haven't had a conversation about this, and obviously read the memo. But staff probably has some concerns about this. And so what I'm curious about is, we've established a new process at rules. You all are going to come and, so the process, I'm trying to remember the exact process. The process now is that someone submits something to rules. You all come forward and maybe have some thoughts on it. We then say, okay, go out and study it, and then come back, right? So there's an extra layer. Submitting this to rules, is it already assumed that we want you to go do the work to figure out, to give us your opinion, if you will? Or are we going to have to, it's going to come to the rules, and then we kick it out for you to go do the work, and then it go back again? Or what do you think the process is?
Yeah, technically it's a two-step process. The Rules Committee now makes, a policy judgment. Is this worth staff's expiration? Are we as a Rules Committee interested in looking at the regulatory framework? And if the Rules Committee wants to do that, we will go back and do some workload analysis. I especially think, it can come up through the budget process as well, which this will. We will likely come back and say, yes, we can do this work as part of the budget process if so directed, because it is budgetary in nature. So I don't have a concern about our capacity to pull that off. But I do think the question for rules will be, and then the full council, is this worth exploring at a policy level?
Okay. So because of that two-step process, then I would say, I think you emphasize it coming before us sooner rather than later at rules. So I would say, to the extent that it can come next week, so that way we can give that direction, assuming that's the will of rules, and it happened much quicker.
Yeah, we're totally fine with next week.
Yeah, okay. All right. Then I would maybe ask to modify the motion further, and just for next week.
Yeah, for next week.
I'll second it, but I want to ask you a quick question. You have enough information in order to, without any further discussion from staff, to move it to rules. Am I clear on that?
That is correct.
Perfect. Let's move it forward then.
Okay. All right. So it seems like that's, I don't see any other hands raised, so we'll go ahead and, I guess we need to approve the motion giving direction to send it to rules. So there's a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and vote. Okay, I think it's unanimous.
And that passes unanimously.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item number 2. Thank you so much, Sarah. We're going to move on to item number 2, second quarter financial reports, fiscal year 2023-2024.
Good afternoon, committee chair and members. My name is Rick Bruno, Director of Finance. Due to today's rather long agenda, I will focus the presentation on the investment section of the second quarter financial report. Our investment policy 1-12 requires verbal reports to the committee with the second and the fourth quarter reports. The team and I are available to answer questions on the full report once we've concluded the presentation. Therefore, I will start on slide 15. And summarize several key elements of the investment policy. Investments must meet and conform to the California Code. Investments are made in highly rated fixed income securities. The investment policy is reviewed annually and reaffirmed by the City Council, and the investment policy is audited twice a year for compliance with the policy. Next, I'll cover the investment program objectives. The objectives of the investment program are safety, liquidity, and then yield. Safety ensures that investments are made in prudent securities that repay the principal amount at maturity. Liquidity ensures investments are easily converted into cash to settle any cash flow needs, and yield is the return on investment we realize from holding such securities. Slide 17 summarizes the overall portfolio performance. As you can see, the size of the total portfolio is approximately $2.4 billion. Earned interest yield is 3.1%. The weighted average maturity is 682 days. And thus far, in the first 6 months, year to date, interest income realized is $39 million. There have been no exceptions to the investment policy this quarter. The pie chart on slide 18 shows the different types of investments held in the portfolio. The largest holding is in highly rated U.S. agency securities at 43%, followed by muni bonds at 15%, corporate notes at 13%, and supranationals and mortgage-backed securities at 9% each. Slide 19 shows the distribution of the portfolio by fund. As you can see, the investment portfolio is made up of more than just the general fund. Large enterprise funds like the airport, wastewater, and energy department, and other funds make up the majority of the investment portfolio. Slide 20 focuses on the general fund and notes that the balance decreased by $24 million in the second quarter. This is a normal trend and will increase in the third quarter as property tax revenues are received in January and June of each year. Slide 21 demonstrates the general fund cash balance over time with sizable increases in the January and June months, as I described on the previous slide. And slide 22 represents the city's portfolio yield in contrast with other indexes. And finally, slide 23 lists our strategy for the foreseeable future. The strategy is to match expenditures with investments over the 24-month horizon, to extend a portion of the portfolio beyond 2 years, to maintain a diversified portfolio, and to maintain true to our objectives of safety, liquidity, and yield. So at that point, that concludes my presentation. We're happy to take questions on the full report.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. I don't see any, well, actually, we're going to go to the public comment, see if there's public comment, then we'll bring it back to the committee.
There is no public comment. Back to the committee.
Okay. And can you remind me, I know item 2 is second quarter financial reports, item 3 is City of San Jose investment policy annual review. This seems to be a combo?
We have a few slides for item number 3, so we will have a separate presentation and a
okay,
separate vote on that item.
Okay, cool. All right, I'll entertain a motion for item number 2. I don't see any hands. Oh, actually, sorry, there are some hands raised. I'll go to Councilmember Batra.
Good. Question, when we have bond measures like Measure T, and we have taken the money for that, is that sitting in the deposits here? And while we are paying the interest on those for the bond measure, and at the same time collecting some interest on these deposits?
That's correct. Any unspent funds from the bond measures will reside in our investment portfolio, and they earn a return while they're unspent.
Okay. And when you say internal management, there's a certain amount of money you manage internally, and then you have other people manage the money for us?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
The amount of investment money which is available, is it all managed by our internal investment committee, or?
Yes, it's all managed internally within our investments business unit that Chin-Yu Sun manages.
Okay, all right, thank you. You want me to make a motion to accept?
You can make a motion to accept.
I move to accept the report.
Oh, yeah, because you need.
Sorry?
Yeah, so make the motion, as you did, but if you can make sure it's cross-referenced.
Oh, cross-reference
to the March 5th, 2024 City Council meeting for full
Okay.
adoption.
Cross-reference to March 5th council. Okay.
Wonderful. So that's item 2, and then
We'll
we have.
second.
Thank you. So a motion and a second, and Vice Mayor Kamei.
Thank you. And I know you went through it quickly, so I don't know if I missed it a little bit. But I was curious in terms of item number 3 on the recommendation regarding write-off uncollectible debts. I was just wondering, is this sort of in line with previous years? I was just wondering if it was up or down, or if this was unusually high, or is that the usual, or I was just curious.
I would say it varies from year to year when we bring it forward. We usually bring forward write-offs twice a year to this committee as part of these reports. The amount that's with this write-off is not unusual. There's been times where it's been larger than that.
Yeah, but this is for 6 months only, for
This
2
is
quarters.
This is based on a review of our delinquent accounts
Right.
that have reached greater than 3 years. So the statute of limitations has expired on them for our ability to collect.
Yeah.
So this is the batch that our team has vetted, has reviewed, and has recommended for write-off.
Okay. I was just curious if this was just for the first 2 quarters, but you say you go back 3 years and it's the accumulation of whatever that is.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's all. Lee, please.
Just, can I make a point of order? For all of the items being cross-referenced, if we can ask the committee to cross-reference these to March 12th and not the 5th. Otherwise, you might be here very late.
Okay, yeah, sorry, this is what's written here, but yeah, that makes sense. So we'll do March 12th from now on. Okay, so it's amended to March 12th?
Agree.
Okay, all right, wonderful. So we'll go ahead and take a vote.
And that passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. And then I suspect same team's going to sit there for the investment policy, right? Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Chen Yusa. I'm the Deputy Director of Finance, Managing Debt and Investment. I will do the presentation on the annual investment policy review and update. So the investment policy is Accountable Policy number 1-12. The policy conforms with the California Government Code section 53601 and etc. Our objectives for the investment is safety, liquidity, and yield in that order. Our strategy, as we discussed before, is to maintain a diversified portfolio of a conservative and highly rated fixed income security investments. And we try to match cash flow needs with maturing securities. And we typically pursue a buy and hold trading strategy so that we will not will not have the risk at any kind of realized loss. By policy requirement, finance departments need to perform annual review of the policy. We typically do that in this time of the year. We submit any proposed change to the PISFIS committee for review and then obtain from the committee approval and then cross-reference to the city council to obtain full council approval. We provide a red line version of the policy update, and as in this, with the staff report, the policy, red line version of the policy is included as Exhibit A. So in this policy update, we propose basically one revision. We want to consolidate the current policy sections 917 and 9-9.18 into one consolidated section called collateralized securities, with a slight increase of a portfolio concentration limit to 20%. Furthermore, we would like to propose to divide this category into two subcategories by issuing agencies. Namely, we want to have two subcategories. One is those collateralized security issued by governmental agencies, and those are issued by private entities. This segregation provides a better management of the risk exposure, because typically the private entity issues collateralized security bears some credit risk, while governmental agencies typically do not have any named credit risk carried under them. So we would like this lineup to propose a better management of the risk for the entire portfolio. Why we want to do this, as we discussed, this lineup will provide a better risk management for the portfolio. We also recognize collateralized security as a group broadens the scope of authorized investment. And furthermore, this redefinition aligns with the city's investment objectives of safety, liquidity, and conforms to the state code. With that, we ask the PISFIS committee to approve the City of San Jose investment policy as amended, and then refer the policy as well as appropriate resolution to this full city council for consideration at the March 12th meeting.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. We're going to go see if we have public comment before we bring it back to the committee.
There is no public comment. Back to the committee.
So no public comment. Just a quick clarification before we entertain a motion. So is it the 12th or the 5th?
12th.
It's the 5th.
12th.
Okay, so we're getting mixed information, so if we can clarify.
Mike, we would like everything referred to March 5th. I misspoke earlier based off of my notes. So we would like everything referred to March 5th because the 12th is very heavy.
Okay. All right, so whoever makes the motion, refer to cross-reference to
Motion
March 5th.
approval, cross-reference to March 5th, please.
Is there a second?
No, you made the wrong March 12th, right?
No.
No.
5th.
Yeah, we just indicated.
Lee said he made a mistake, so we are moving to March 5th.
They're all going to be the 5th moving forward.
Okay, all right. This is wrong?
I don't know what your copy says. What is your copy?
Printed agenda says March 12th.
Yeah, mine says 5th. but I have a
Yes,
different.
sorry, that's why I'm getting confused. We originally wanted everything on the actual agenda and recommendation language referred to March 12th. Because of other deferred items, March 12th now is a long meeting. So in the annotated agenda for the chair and I, it says March 5th.
Correct. So that's the.
And
change.
it's simply just for agenda management, so we don't lock you in here all day long like we've done to you today.
Okay, so the desired thing is March 5th.
Correct.
That is correct.
And that's the motion on the floor. So, okay, we'll go ahead and vote unless, actually,
So-
Councilmember, Vice Mayor Kamei.
So we were wrong in the previous motion?
Yes, so
So we
I
have
was
to-
wrong.
But then we have to take it back?
So I'll address that right now. So let's vote
Okay.
on this and then,
All right.
correct. So I caught that. We'll go back. So the vote here is to cross-reference this to the March 5th council meeting. There is a second, a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and vote. And so I don't know, Lee or city attorney's office, if we need a motion to reopen the previous item to change the referral date to the 5th instead of the 12th?
Tara and I think we can just handle that one for
Okay.
rules. You can move forward.
All right, very good. I assume that when it comes to rules, we can put it wherever it needs to go, so. okay.
Sure.
All right.
My apologies.
All right, very good. No problem. Okay, we'll move on to item number 4, which is thank you so much for the presentation. Appreciate it. We're going to move forward to number 4, non-management employee appraisal audit report. Joe and his team are here, and yeah, and this is also going to be for the 5th.
So good afternoon, Joe Royce, City Auditor. I'm here with Abeli Opie and Ricky Tran from my office for our non-management performance appraisal audit. The administration should improve and clarify the appraisal processes. Also in the box is Jennifer Chambry, the Director of Human Resources. Staff development and performance feedback are encompassed in the City of San Jose's core values. And non-management employees are a significant portion of the city's workforce, with roughly 4,300 non-management staff as of June 30th, 2023. The city policy manual provides guidelines for annual and probationary appraisals for non-management employees, and while the Human Resources Department, or HR, oversees the overall appraisal process, individual departments are accountable for conducting performance appraisals and forwarding them to HR for inclusion in the employee's personnel file. In 2018, the administration identified the performance measure percent of non-management employee performance appraisals completed on schedule as a key performance indicator for the strategic support city service area. Being on schedule has meant historically that an appraisal had been conducted within 30 days of the end of an individual's appraisal period, and this 30 days was meant to account for the expected processing time for the appraisal itself, for example, scheduling, signature gathering, and other administrative tasks. As noted in the administration's response, they will be revisiting whether 30 days makes sense moving forward. The administration set a target for 80% of non-management employee performance appraisals to be completed on schedule for fiscal year 22-23, and the objective of this audit was to review non-management performance appraisals for timeliness. We had 2 findings. The first finding is that nearly 3/4 of non-management employees had a current appraisal on file. However, timeliness can be improved. As of June 30th, 2023, including both annual and probationary appraisals, roughly 74% of non-management employees either had a performance appraisal within the past year or one currently due. However, timeliness can be improved, as 28% of staff received appraisals more than 30 days after the end of the appraisal period. 11% were more than 90 days past. In some cases, staff have gone extended periods without receiving appraisal, and at the time of the audit, the administration had not been tracking appraisals for non-management part-time staff. Lastly, we noted that automation can help simplify and streamline the appraisal process. To improve the non-management appraisal process, we recommend the administration establish a process to better notify and follow up with departments on outstanding appraisals, clarify expectations around providing and tracking appraisals for part-time staff, implement automated workflows to streamline the process, and provide additional training to supervisors who complete the appraisals. The second finding is that the administration should review its current performance measure around non-management performance appraisals. The report from the city's Human Resource Management System, or HRMS, used for calculating the performance measure did not calculate results accurately at the time of the audit. For example, appraisals were considered on schedule even if they were conducted more than 30 days past the end of the appraisal period. Based on how the HRMS report captured appraisal data, we noted more than 200 instances that completed appraisals would have been considered on schedule despite being conducted more than 4 months past the end of the individual's appraisal period. Also, at the time of the audit, the report query miscalculated the processing period allowed for an appraisal before an appraisal would have been considered overdue. This was corrected during the audit. So to more accurately report performance, we recommend the administration adjust its reporting tool to more accurately assess whether appraisals were on schedule and document the methodologies moving forward. The report has 8 recommendations to improve the non-management performance appraisal process and reporting. We'd like to thank HR, the City Manager's Office, Office of Employee Relations, and the City Attorney's Office for their time and insight during the audit process. I ask that you accept the report and cross-reference to the March 5th meeting of the City Council. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll turn it over to Jennifer Schembri for the administration's response.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Schembri, Director of Human Resources and Employee Relations. We appreciate the Auditor's Office's work on this audit, and as our response mentioned, it is important that performance appraisals are completed on a regular and ongoing basis. While HR oversees the overall process, it is each department director along with their staff that are accountable for ensuring completion of performance appraisals within required timeframes. It is important, as our response noted, to recognize that during the COVID pandemic response, many of our employees were pulled into COVID response efforts and were focused on providing important and critical services to our community. And performance appraisals were just one of many regular duties that were not able to be completed as timely as we would have liked. However, starting in fiscal year 22-23, the city manager emphasized the importance of getting up to date on performance appraisal completion, and this resulted in a high of 93% of appraisals tracked as completed. With the corrections to the report the Auditor's Office identified in a different time period, we're now at approximately 74% completed. This continues to be a really important focus of the city manager, and we will continue to work to be as close as possible to an on-time 100% completion rate. And thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll see if there's any public comment.
There is no public comment. Back to the committee.
Okay, all right. I don't see if I see any hands. Vice Mayor Kamei.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the report. You know, I truly believe that it is important to follow through on many of these appraisal reports. And it's sort of a learning for both the supervisor as well as the individual. So I don't know if there are systems in place like automatic notices or something that can be done where I know that sometimes when you're very busy, you know, things kind of fall through the cracks. But, you know, if we think that it's important, then we should increase the number of completed appraisals done. And I think that if we don't have those reminders, sometimes it, you know, I just think of how good the reminders are when we have to do the trainings, especially the cybersecurity trainings. They keep coming. They keep coming. And sometimes it can get a little bit too much, but it gets the job done. And I'm just wondering, you know, for a period of time to see if that would be helpful. And I know that there is technology already that can assist with that. And does help people, you know, get it done. So I'm hoping that we could use like some tools to bring that percentage up a little bit higher.
Yes, just to respond really quickly. So we are automating the form. That will make the process a little bit easier, but we are also looking at some performance management systems. As you've heard me talk about a lot, we just implemented NeoGov, which is the new hiring application system, and it has various modules you can add on to that, and one is a performance management system that I think would have a lot of what you're talking about there. And there are also other things out there as well, so that's something that we are exploring further.
Yeah, I know that there are even systems where they even create suggested language that has been sort of cleared through legal in terms of how you can write in a way that is beneficial both to the individual person as well as the supervisor, so that you create greater clarity in terms of what is expected. So I think that that is also out there, and you know, they have some pretty good ones, so I think it's worth at least looking at it. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. We have Councilmember Batra.
The management or the appraisals, do they form a basis for something else in terms of either the monetary things or promotions or any of those things?
So this is the non-management performance appraisal. So it does not, in our management performance appraisal program, our MPP, which is for our management employees, that is the basis for merit increases. And this, there are limited merit increases in the non-management, so it would be a basis for that. Also, withholding a step increase would also be something we would look at the performance appraisal for. But definitely it also is something that's taken into consideration for promotions or even internal transfers within the department. They should be looking at an employee's personnel file and looking at their performance appraisals.
So why would it not be 100% requirement as that everybody be given an appraisal and be on the file, whether 30 days or 25 days? Does it need to be like, I see a target to be 70 or 80% or whatever? Why wouldn't it be 100%?
I can start. So the expectation in the policies is that, yes, everyone gets an appraisal. The 80% is the on-schedule performance appraisal. So 80% are on schedule, meaning within a certain time frame from the end of the appraisal period. But you're right. The expectation in the policy is that everyone has an appraisal. I don't know if you have anything to add, or if that.
No, that is the expectation, and as I mentioned, there's various factors that go into that, including what we talked about, the COVID response, and so we've made it a focus after that to make sure we got back on track with it. But there are a lot of different factors that go into it. We would never be, I think, 100% completion on time, as we have employees on leave and things like that, especially in our police and fire department. So, but as close as possible is our goal.
No, I think I understand that they won't be done in 100% in time frame, but 100% of them should get done in whatever time frame beyond 30 days or 45 days, because like in the private sector, there was no exception to it. Everybody had to get their review, and they had to be in, and I think if you have the same policy, you made exception during pandemic, lots of things were made exceptions, so time to bring it back. Okay, thank you.
If I could add, so there's a couple recommendations in the report kind of get to address some of what you're describing. So one of the things we were seeing is some folks potentially could have gone an extended period of time because they shifted positions within the organization, in which case their appraisal period might shift. There might be some confusion of who's supposed to provide the appraisal, because if it's mid-year, is the former supervisor, the current supervisor, who's providing that? So we had some recommendations about clarifying those expectations. We did talk with departments about some of the pain points they had, and so we did have recommendations in terms of clarifying some of these, what is the proper processing period, 36 days, whatever. Also some additional training, because some supervisors weren't necessarily comfortable giving appraisals, and we're seeking additional guidance. So a couple of recommendations trying to clarify those expectations when there's transfers, clarify expectations around processing periods, additional trainings, and then obviously the automated workflow as well that Councilmember Kamaya was talking about. So there's 3 or 4 recommendations trying to get at kind of that broad process to make sure people don't fall through the cracks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on to Councilmember Dwan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff, for putting together the audit. Have we tried, for example, a competition between different departments who can come up with, a higher percentage, and that particular department could get I don't know, some type of prize or pizza for that matter, to create, the more percentages of appraisal to come in.
No, Lee, you want to give a pizza party for the department? We have not. That is something that we can talk about. But we have shared and spoken with all of senior staff at the same time and shared the information with all of senior staff at the same time so they can see where other departments are compared to where they are. I think we expect this to be a normal part of their duties and an expectation of a supervisor. So I'm not sure about the prize part, but Lee.
Yeah, I think we've probably gone more the shaming route than the celebration route. I do think, though, it is really important that this become just part of our SOPs and departments. As part of us retaining our workforce, our employees work very hard and on very complicated things, and without regular feedback, we're at risk of losing those individuals. So that's something that Jennifer and I have tried very hard with senior staff. And we haven't tried the competition route, but Jennifer's had a lot of great ideas too. Just some of these departments that have so many employees and different start dates, just maybe moving all of those into the same month. So it's just more of a regular thing like, oh, it's April, we're going to work through these together. So I think we're trying to just improve the process overall, because it's very important for our employees that they get this feedback.
I totally agree with you, because if they don't know where they stand and what their performance, how can they improve, right? And I believe in trying to be positive. We don't want to go into consequences, but shaming is not too bad either. Thank you.
Okay, so I still don't think we have a motion. So if someone can make a motion.
I'll motion to accept the report with cross-reference to March 5th.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and take a vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on to our last item of the day. We're moving at lightning speed here. It's item 5, Cannabis Business Regulations and Annual Operating Fee Comparison.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, committee members, and members of the public. My name is Wendy Salazzi, and I'm the Division Manager in the Police Department's Division of Cannabis Regulation. With me today is Sergeant David Woolsey and Deputy Chief Shab. Based on this committee's direction on October 19th, the staff is providing an update on the following topics: of the possibility of aligning San Jose's regulations with state regulations and comparing San Jose's annual fees for cannabis operations with other jurisdictions. San Jose's regulations began in 2014 and the state regulations began in 2018. And California's program was designed to allow local regulation and taxation. It empowers municipalities to regulate at the local level. If regulations conflict, the strictest regulation prevails. It enables cities and counties to regulate issues important to each community. We felt it was important to compare various aspects of age comparisons so City Council and the public knows what the differences are. While we've heard feedback, the businesses support the age requirements to remain unchanged. There are some businesses that have let us know they continue to lose business opportunities when they need to turn away 18 to 20-year-old medical patients with valid physician recommendations that other cities accept. Both San Jose's and the state's regulations require age verification prior to purchase. However, they differ in how that's accomplished. San Jose requires the use of an electronic age verification device which scans the ID and displays the person's age. The state's regulations require inspecting a valid form of identification, which leaves it up to the person inspecting the ID to know the age 21 buy date and do the math to determine if the presenter of the ID is under 21 years old. Consistent with previous committee direction, we are not recommending changing our age requirement. As you can see on the chart, where we differ from the state is we background owners between 10 and 20% ownership interest, all employees and drivers. We verify the driver has a valid driver license and insurance, and that the owner of the delivery vehicle knows the vehicle will be used for cannabis delivery. Both San Jose's regulations and the state's regulations require persons working at cannabis businesses to wear a specific identification badge. However, they differ in purpose. The badge issued by our division is issued after an individual has been fingerprinted as part of the criminal background investigation. By wearing the badge, it allows for quick and easy identification of those persons who have initiated the background process versus those who have not. The state-required badge does not perform that function. An additional benefit of the current identification badge issuance process is it affords the division the opportunity to ascertain accurate employee counts to ensure compliance with labor peace agreement requirements. People working in these businesses have behind-the-scenes access to cannabis, money, and sensitive business information such as building layouts and security measures. These background checks promote a safer work environment in a sensitive industry. In the area of property and product security, there are a few key differences between San Jose's regulations and the state's. San Jose requires each business to install and maintain an Underwriter Laboratories listed burglar alarm system. It's an alarm system with a mercantile certificate, a standard similar to jewelry stores. A UL burglar alarm system uses extensive sensors to detect any intrusion and trigger the alarm. San Jose's regulations also prescribe a specific response by the business. The state's regulations also require an alarm monitored by an alarm company or agent, but do not specify the standards of the alarm system or the timeliness and nature of the response to an alarm activation. Both sets of regulations require cannabis and cannabis products to be stored indoors. However, San Jose additionally requires they are stored in a safe, vault, or other secure storage inside the premises. This additional requirement is meant to make it more difficult to obtain and divert cannabis and cannabis products in the event of burglary. Video camera systems are required by both San Jose and the state. However, video storage is another area in which San Jose's regulations differ from the state's. San Jose requires video be stored and made available to regulators or law enforcement for 30 days, while the state requires video be retained and made available for 90 days. Since the state's requirements are more restrictive, all San Jose businesses must follow the state's storage requirement of 90 days. Another difference in San Jose's security requirements versus the state's is the area of delivery vehicles. San Jose requires delivery vehicles employ a dual-facing video camera system, and while alarm and security storage regulations cannot prevent persons from breaking into a business, they can make it difficult and so slow burglars down. Staff reviewed the annual, Staff reviewed the annual operating fee for cannabis business activities for notable neighboring California cities, Mountain View, Oakland, Sacramento, and San Francisco. The operating fees vary between being charged per permit type, cannabis activity, or business. When the fee is based on permit type or activity, it is important to note one business may hold multiple permits or conduct multiple activities, and the total fee each business pays is based on the number of permits or activities. San Jose's annual operating fee is intended to recover 100% of the costs incurred by the city to pay for the multi-department staff for their professional responsibilities and other costs needed to sustain the full scope of the City Council's policy direction for the program. The staffing level is based on regulatory and enforcement operations related to the 16 registered cannabis businesses. The costs for the program are paid by the registered business in their annual operating fee and other fees for service. Since the cannabis regulatory program was moved to the police department, the annual operating fee regulatory staffing levels have decreased from 11.33 to 7.25. And in the next few slides, this is kind of a repeat of what we brought, I think back in October or November to full council to let the public know that there are resources available. So how to contact the police department for illegal sales of cannabis, mushrooms, fentanyl, and other illegal substances, and how to file complaints about registered cannabis businesses. And the city's Code Enforcement Division responds to multiple code violations on private property, such as zoning, building, and blight violations. They address unregistered cannabis businesses, cannabis cultivated for personal use, or cannabis odors. And then the resources for the state of California, the Department of Cannabis Control investigates the complaints of unlicensed or illegal cannabis activity. And then the Office of Youth Tobacco Enforcement investigates flavored tobacco and sales to minors. The police department and code enforcement are scheduled to return to this committee in April to review and discuss the possibility of expanding the police department's Division of Cannabis Regulations responsibilities to include regulating licensed tobacco retailers on the April 18th committee meeting. Our recommendation today is to accept the report on how San Jose's regulations compare to the state's regulations and how San Jose's annual operating fee compares to other jurisdictions. And with that, we're available for questions.
Thank you so much. We'll come back to the committee, but first we'll go to public comment.
We have 3 speaker cards submitted. Can Sean, Callie Ray, Brando Duong, and Sharmi Shah please make your way down to the podium? You guys can line up along the steps. You guys will each have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you very much for the time this afternoon. I want to thank you all again for taking the time to delve into this issue. We're frankly disappointed that 4 months have gone by since October 19th. This is the report that was drafted in 4 months. We'd think that there would be something substantially more comprehensive, substantially more introspective, and substantially more research done with aligning to the state. And by aligning to the state, I think we all know what that is for code, is to find the duplications that are happening at the state and here and find ways to eliminate them or make them more efficient. The more money you save at the city goes back into the general fund. The goal of the city is not to spend all the money that you possibly bring in through the front door. So it's unfortunate. On top of that, the division's functionally obsolete. It made sense in 2015. It doesn't make sense in 2024. It needs to change. The slides that you just saw regarding the age, none of the cannabis dispensaries want to reduce the age from 21. We don't know what the point of all of these slides were. Councilmember Chair Jimenez's memo underlined the very fact that you don't want to reduce the age from 21. So rather than coming back with a thoughtful report that actually tries to find a compromise or some sort of middle ground between the dispensaries, the legal dispensaries here, the illegal market and how to address it, and what the council should move forward, we basically got a sales pitch about how great they are and why they should be justified to continue to do what they're doing when they're functionally obsolete. It's unfortunate. It's substantially unfortunate. 2 dispensaries in San Jose have closed. How many more closures have to take place before the Division of Cannabis Regulation is actually going to understand that they need to change? They need to keep cannabis out of schools, away from children, and illegal activity out of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharmi Shah. I represent half the cannabis businesses in San Jose. I'm here because while I appreciate the efforts of the department to date, I do agree and reiterate what Mr. Kalirai said, which is that this system is outdated. I'd also like to point out several misstatements which were unfortunately made in the staff report. I represent the only registered business in the city of Mountain View. Their licensing fee is not $139,000, it's $1,942. The city of Mountain View banned storefront retail businesses back in May of 2019. So it's very disingenuous to try to justify the city of San Jose's $139,000 annual fee by falsely pointing to a Mountain View fee being comparable to the city of San Jose when that doesn't even exist in the city of Mountain View. Second, the staff report stated that they had a decrease in the number of full-time employees from about 11 employees to 7 employees. What they don't point out is they didn't decrease their fees in that period of time. So that means those 7 employees had an increase in their compensation of 46% over the last 8 years. Again, these businesses are suffering. They cannot continue to afford this annual fee. With the now closure of 2 businesses in the city of San Jose, because they cannot function in this heavily regulated environment and pay these exorbitant fees, if you leave this status quo, these existing 14 businesses will have to pay $160,000 per year, just because the budget number gets divided by 14 instead of 16. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Brando. I'm a local dispensary owner. I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about what's going on with me. I believe that the annual fee is too high. Every year we pay it, but the thing is the regulators don't do anything to combat the illicit activity in San Jose, so I'm getting squeezed on both sides. While they demand more and more money from me every year, the illegal operations are encroaching on my business and depleting my traffic. It's a really difficult situation for me. I don't think going forward I'm going to be able to afford to stay in business anymore. I'm actually surprised that I'm still able to be in business. These illegal operations just keep thriving, and cannabis in the legal space is not thriving. My traffic is dwindling by the day, by the month, and I hear them trying to raise the fee to 160,000 because the number of dispensaries has fallen down to 14 from 16, and I just don't see how I'm going to survive past this year. And I hope that you guys can see that and help me out. Thank you.
Thank you. And back to the committee.
Okay, I think we have one council member that has a question. Councilmember Torres.
Yes, I have a couple of questions, not a question. It's good to spend all day with you guys today, by the way. I have a lot, but I'm just gonna probably ask the most important ones. One of them is, how many ID badges does the DCR issue each year?
I think last year it was around 1,200.
Okay, great. And then the next question is for actually our assistant chief. So if you can make your way down awkwardly, please. In 2023, Chief, how many times, let me word this right. Yeah, this is right, sorry. 2023, how many times has an alarm been triggered at a business in San Jose, and what was the average response time to that response? And I asked it because I've had a few cannabis stores in my district who said that they called the police and that they never showed up. So that's why I'm asking.
So first of all, I don't have the data. Are you asking for alarm response times generally to all alarms or to cannabis dispensary alarms?
I'm sorry,
only?
yes, just to cannabis dispensaries, yes, sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't have that data right this moment. I can certainly get that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because that's obviously, worrisome that our cannabis dispensaries, right? They obviously, I'm assuming, I don't do it, but I'm supportive. I don't do it, but I'm supportive that they carry a lot of cash, and obviously the merchandise is extremely expensive. And not only that, right? We're also thinking of the employees who work for the dispensaries, right? They need to feel safe. And again, I've said it. You're not to blame, Chief, but I've said it time and time again, right? This industry, bankrolls a lot of our general fund, and so that's why it's really imperative that we make sure that they're not being overtaxed or I should say, or the black market is making a comeback where they're eventually closing, right? We've already had 2 dispensaries close. So but that was my question to you, and I don't have other questions to SJPD, but I have a couple more questions to the folks on the hot seat over here. And I know that we've discussed smoke and vape shops, not only on this committee, but on NSE. And since we last met, or since you last been here, since October, has the DCR investigated the number of vape or smoke shops?
Again, as I highlighted, that we regulate the registered businesses, so code enforcement is responsible for responding to complaints about illegal operations, and I don't have the data for them. And
yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I don't have data either. Part of Councilmember Jimenez's memo that was passed last year was for us to look at tobacco retailers and the status. So that, and possible cannabis regulations around that. So that is agendized for April. So I know Code and the police department are working on that. I will say, as we talked about last time, the regulatory fee for cannabis, with state law allows us to regulate those cannabis businesses. The possible illegal activity that goes on within smoke shops or tobacco shops, which I think we have roughly 600 across the city, that would be criminal in nature and prioritized as part of the department's workload along with Code and the state. So those are 2 separate functions.
All right. And maybe this is a more direct question to you, Lee. Before I left the city and came back as a council member, I was part of a small little task force to deal with massage parlors, because especially there are a lot of them in District 5, right? And rest in peace, Captain Schreifer. He was the one that led it. Do you need direction from us to tackle these vape and smoke shops that are doing a lot of the black market? Making a motion for a task force or submitting a memo at rules?
No, so I mean, I think we have direction to come back to you and give you a status update of the 600-something tobacco retailers in the city, what we are doing, what that framework is, how Code looks at that. Obviously, if there is illegal activity and there are statewide task force that PD is a part of, that we would probably not include in that type of report. However, I can say from some of the briefings, just anecdotal information, and it was on NPR the other day, that a lot of the major downtowns and cities throughout the state of California, because of the decriminalization or way lesser penalties around drugs, that there's a lot of connotations that a lot of the tobacco companies are in this, and we don't necessarily have that proof yet. Obviously, there are bad actors out there everywhere, but I wouldn't say we have a nexus to it is fundamentally changing the market yet. That's part of the work we're trying to do for April for you.
Okay, and the other one is, the other one might be you all. I know that Purple Lotus is finally opening up a storefront here in downtown San Jose, and I'm glad that they are, especially since we have 60+ vacant storefronts in our city, and I'm glad that our city made it easier for cannabis storefronts. Our cannabis storefronts, they fall under our city and state regulations as our dispensaries do. They have the same regulations from the city and the state. Mm-hmm. They're just a storefront.
They're just a standalone retail storefront. Where they are now, they might do cultivation, retail storefront, delivery, manufacturing, distribution. But
and they can't do that at a real retail shop.
No, it's zoned for commercial retail, so that's
okay. So they can only sell it. Mm-hmm. All right. Cool. Great. That's all the questions that I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have Councilmember Dwan.
Thank you, staff, for the report. I just got a few questions here. Why does the badge need to be reissued every year? And specifically, if the city employees are not required to obtain a new badge each year, especially when you, what you call the the scan, the live scan, that's only required once, right? Or not done every year by PD. So why would we require the cannabis to do it every year?
So we require when they begin working at the business, we require the background check, which includes the live scan. And then on an annual basis, they're required to renew. So we just recently actually rolled it out, I think, maybe it was yesterday. We rolled out a new process for the badge renewals because we heard the feedback back, I think it was in October and November. And then we changed our process to where it makes it less of a burden on the business to get those renewed. We like to make sure that we know who's still working at the business, but once we issue you an identification badge, you'll just keep that one until the business, you sever your relationship with the business, then we'll collect it at that time. But we just changed that because we heard the feedback, so.
Oh, thank you. Sounds like regulation on the possession, distribution, and cultivation of cannabis are stricter than of the state of California. How are San Jose businesses' violation compared to other municipalities in California? And how often does of these occurs, and what is the gravity of these violations?
I mean, I don't know how we compare like our violations to our code versus other cities. I do know that we don't issue very many citations because our goal is to work with the business and get them to comply without having to have that extra fine. So when there are violations, and there have been, we work with them to ensure compliance. So again, we don't, again, from a statistical standpoint, I think when we came to this committee in October, we talked about how there were only 5 citations, or 5 citations that resulted in fines for this, the registered businesses and illegal operations. But again, there are multiple violations that, again, we work with them. And the only time that they'll see a fine is if it's continuously doing the same thing over and over.
Has staff considered lowering the fees in order for some of these dispensary to survive with the existing strain of the black market?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your question.
Has you guys considered lowering the fees? Especially at the current rate of our dispensary, all the strain that they're dealing with the black market.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were responsive with the lowering of the fines back in November. Council voted on that and approved. Those were a large or a pretty big decrease in those. The annual operating fee, we'll review it during our budget cycle this year and see if there's any reductions that can be made or any other staffing efficiencies that we can make, and we'll put it through during the budget process. That's something that we work through outside of this process. We'll be doing that. I think we do that, I think, around every March anyways.
And then I have another question for you on the storefront video surveillance. The state required 90 days. Why is San Jose only required 30 days? So we're not in alignment, right, with the state requirements? In the end, we have to meet the state requirements, right, because it's a higher standard. Why don't we change that?
Good afternoon. This is Sergeant Woolsey. I'll take that question. So originally in 2014, when the program was being put together, we had a 90-day requirement at the city. We heard feedback from the businesses that storage of video for 90 days on some of the larger businesses that have maybe 100 cameras would be a really high expense for the hardware needed to store that much video. So we reevaluated and passed a 30-day requirement because our thought was, realistically, if something happens at the business, they're required to tell us more or less right away. We have time within 30 days to retrieve the video. If we're doing, audits or monitoring or reviewing the business on a timely fashion, we shouldn't need more than 30 days worth of video, and that's why we landed at 30 days. When the state came up with their regs, they landed at 90 days. I don't know why, we don't work for the state, but that's why there's a discrepancy.
Thank you. And in 2023, how many times did the DCR have to reject an employee identification badge due to criminal background?
Sorry, I'll take that one too. I don't know the number offhand. I do know that fairly recently, in the last couple of years, we learned that people are disqualified based on a criminal conviction. We've started to reach out to them and work with them on record clearance. If the record gets cleared by the court, or expunged is another common term, then the conviction doesn't get used against them for employment. And most people are going and getting their convictions expunged, and then remain allowed to work in the business. So I don't have the exact number of disqualifications, but most of them get it expunged and continue working.
And can you tell me, you went from 11 employees down to 7.7 employees. Now, there's a cost saving there, right? If you have less employees, then there would be less cost. Where's the rest of the funding goes to? Right here on page number 8, the annual fees and total full-time employees from 11 in 16-17 to 7 in 23-24.
I mean, salaries don't remain the same. So when you look at what the total cost for the FTE count, last year it's different. Even with the same people on the team, it's different this year. So it's based on, what their current salaries are.
And so what are the function of these 7 employees?
We have employees from finance, the police department, obviously, the city manager's office, city attorney's office, and planning, building, code enforcement. So, we do policy coordination. There's the compliance with our code enforcement for zoning compliance. There's financial compliance review, legal advice. Those are just kind of in general.
Okay. So how many employees are in the code enforcement in order to, stamp down on the illegal cannabis sales?
Yeah, I can't speak on behalf of code, because again, the FTE count is based on for the regulatory program. So there's half of a code enforcement, any combination of various positions, but there's half an FTE from code enforcement that's included in the annual operating fee.
I think it's important that, a lot of us may not condone the cannabis, but if it's illegal businesses, then we need to protect them from those illegal businesses, if you will. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. We'll go to Councilmember Badra.
After the detailed report, I saw at the overview level 3 different issues being brought up. One, I think, I'm not into the micromanagement of your department, what each person does, when you issue the badge, when you don't. But I think what came across to me is that is it time for self-evaluation of your group in terms of the reasons why you were set up, and are we still needing the same level of activity, or do we need to change that? Whether you issue a badge every 6 months or 2 years, that's not what I'm here for. So I leave that to the experts, okay? But I do want to have a self-evaluation in terms of what you're doing, does it need doing, and if anything, our fee structures and all that, how do we make it sure that they are supportive of our business? And the other item, which is not seem to be in your scope, but it has an impact on this activity, is that illegal cannabis business, because that seems to affect what profits these people can make, what they can afford to pay. And so how do we, okay, I see my response coming back.
So, Councilmember, I think you're raising two questions. One is there duplication between what we're doing at this level and what is being done by the state? And I'm not prepared to answer that question exactly, but I would just caution that we would want to probably know what any other regulatory bodies' capabilities are before we abandon our efforts at regulation. That would be the first thing. And then as far as there's this contention that there's a lot of illegal marijuana sales occurring in the smoke shops, and while that may be the case, if that's occurring, as has been mentioned earlier, that's a criminal violation. That's not just a administrative regulatory matter, and we can investigate that like any other. I mean, we recently, our Metro unit conducted an investigation at a donut shop that was selling cocaine and methamphetamine. So we're not opposed to investigating illegal drug sales at a business. So, but we need something more actionable than just a general contention that this is occurring.
In terms of, you're saying the reporting or the information or the ordinance, or?
In other words, if someone has specific information about a specific business conducting illegal activity, that's something we can investigate. But presently, we're not staffed to conduct regulatory inspections and whatnot of all of the smoke shops in the city of San Jose. It's just it's a huge workload that we don't have the staffing presently to do.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and I think what we are hearing is that is probably as big an issue as the other items, which are over fees and overcharges and all that kind of stuff. So I think what we would like is suggestion from your side that what kind of information proactively can be collected, and if those license plate readers and things like those, or the surveillance cameras which are now in place, if any of those are going to help us out, because or how do we assist you in getting that, because it looks like it's a two-pronged problem at least, and we want to address each one of the prongs to the best of our ability to do it. Okay.
Yes, Councilmember. Any specific information about a specific location and illegal activity is what we would need to investigate presently, because it would be a criminal violation like any other.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, and can we ask for the self-evaluation of the group in terms of any modifications you need to do to your activities, staffing, or whatever, since it's a budget time? It's a good time to review that. It's a question under the implication, if they're willing to accept that and come back to it.
Oh yeah, sorry, I thought I had mentioned that earlier, that we can look at that through the fees and charges process this year.
Okay, do we need that as a part of the motion or anything, or they just got it? Okay, all right, okay. Thank you then, let's move.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Batra.
Do we need a motion?
You can make a motion if you like. I know we have one more speaker, but
okay.
It's up to you. I'll call on Vice Mayor Kamal, please.
Thank you so much. When I first became a council member, one of the things, you do all the meeting with different people and educating yourself on these different areas and programs and such. And one of the things that I do recall is that the program was one of the first, very innovative and all of that. And, you know, as we're going into budget right now, you know, it has been some time, there's been a lot of lessons learned. I wonder if, kind of like to Councilmember Batra's suggestion on self-evaluation, I'm just wondering if there is a need to sort of step back and have some assistance. Maybe there's an opportunity to and of course, it's going to cost money, so my fellow council members need to realize that if we do this, we might not be able to do that, and it might be, you know, worthwhile to do an assessment and put resources towards that if the council feels that it's an important thing to take a look at in terms of, you know, processes, in terms of, you know, what else has been done. You know, I think that since cannabis was legalized, a lot has changed, right? And so I'm just wondering if the team is a small team, but, you know, over the years have learned quite a bit. And maybe, I don't know if there's a statewide either association group or whatever where there's exchange of information, but it would seem to me very helpful if we can take a look at that, see what works, what doesn't work, and be able to come back with looking at existing conditions and what you'd like to do or what you'd like to recommend in terms of any changes if needed, right? So, but I do recognize that it's going to cost money to have someone help you look at that. It isn't just with a small team, but if it's something that the council is willing to put money behind, the budget process would be the place to do it.
I'll just say something really quick. Thank you very, very much, Vice Mayor. I think you're right. If there's direction from the council for us to go back and look at what we're doing, we can certainly do that with that direction. What I think is important to also understand is while the laws made the possession of marijuana legal, there are still laws that make the sale of marijuana illegal. And so the requirement to continue to monitor and regulate that part of it, the sale of, not just the possession of, is an important distinction to remember.
And I think that in this whole process, that is extremely helpful because then we can address what is and what is not. Because I think sometimes things get kind of like a little bit muddy. And then, you know, the outcomes are different. I also think that there's a disadvantage when there are those out there who are selling and they're not supposed to be selling, right? I mean, I understand that you have limited resources, but at the same time, you know, we have to recognize that these other things are happening, especially, you know, who knows, online and all that kind of stuff. So I think that if there's a need to address that, maybe just trying to figure out, okay, what's the problem we're trying to solve and how do we address it? And I think that that would be part of the conversation as opposed to saying, oh, this is us and that's over there and this is, sometimes it kind of like comes together.
Chairman, do we make the motion?
Oh. Yeah,
Okay,
you can. I just wanted to ask a few questions. So and then we can make and I actually have some thoughts about the motion, but although I won't make it, but I'll mention. but the first question I had is, and I think it was touched on very briefly by Sergeant Woolsey, and that is, I was wondering, like, what type of, so when folks are disqualified from getting a badge or can't get a badge because whatever criminal history they have. I know you mentioned expungements and things of that nature, folks to get things expunged, but what would prohibit someone from getting a badge? What type of sort of offense would say, okay, you can't get a badge, hence you can't work at the dispensary? And there may be a long list, and if there is, I'm just curious the type of stuff.
Sure, I'll hit on the general themes. It's crimes of violence, force, fraud, fear, deception, use of a firearm, theft, embezzlement, or possession, sale, or use of drugs other than cannabis.
Other than cannabis.
Broadly, yeah.
Okay. And this is so if they're actually applying for the badge, it's assumed that whether they have those, they've sort of had those type of convictions, that it's likely that if they're applying, they've already served the prison sentence or whatever, and they're now in this space, or right?
Yeah, and let me add, those are convictions within the last 10 years.
Okay.
So there's another category of moral turpitude, which would be something that's really serious we can look at that whenever, not just within the 10 years. But within those 10 years, if they have one of those convictions, or if they're on probation or parole for one of those types of convictions, then they would be precluded from working at the business. Typically, if they're on probation or parole, it's well within 10 years.
Right, okay, all right. And is that per state law, or is it just something that we embedded in the policy when we originally created this?
That's
sort of
in
structure?
our ordinance.
It's in our, okay. So that was decided obviously some time back. We determined these are the crimes that we want to make sure that.
Correct.
Okay, all right, okay, it makes sense. The other question I had was related to I think, Wendy, you had mentioned that we make sure as a city that the folks driving vehicles that are employed by the dispensaries are licensed, like literally have a driver's license. How did that come about? Because I know there's obviously a lot of businesses around the city that do deliveries, and we don't regulate any of that. And I just wonder sometimes if that's very much in the weeds. Is it really? Because every business would want it. You have to have people insured when they're driving vehicles and such. And so I'd be curious how that came about, and if you think that's a change, for example, that could be made, and why it's necessary. I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around.
I mean, it was a council policy decision when we added delivery as an option, a few years back. Again, what they're carrying in their vehicle isn't, your dinner tonight, right? It is cannabis. It is a drug in their vehicle. So, we feel it's important to know that they're actually a licensed driver and that they have insurance, and that the people, that if they're not the registered owner of the vehicle, that the registered owner is aware that they're delivering cannabis. So, again, it's a council policy decision. So if council doesn't want to have that in place, then you can make a recommendation to change it.
Yeah, and I realize these are circumstances, it seems to me, in which we've created the box that we're in effectively, right? I mean, not we, but obviously past councils, and so I appreciate that. The other question I had was around the comparison cities as it relates to the fee. You heard mention of Mountain View as an example. I don't know if you had any comments about what was said. And before you answer, how did you choose which cities to compare? Because I know there's other cities that have, say, Redwood City or Hayward or Union City, and I was curious how you chose those.
Yeah, it's the cities that we used last time. Redwood City is another one that we could have included in there. Again, it was just a sample to say, we are acknowledging our annual operating fee is relatively high, but in Mountain View, that annual operating fee does exist. It's in their adopted fees and charges program. So when I was comparing our city to other cities and reviewing their fees and charges schedule as we have a fee schedule that includes an annual operating fee. We have various application receipts fees, and again, across the city, all sorts of things. But then for the cannabis program in Mountain View, there is an annual operating fee. So again, it's hard to compare. Again, you're not always comparing apples to apples, right? Because some of the other cities do it based on permit or activity. But they do, in fact, have a fee that's related to that. Whether or not anyone's paying it, I don't know that. Yeah. But there is a delivery fee that I believe is the amount that Ms. Shaw had mentioned. So, but yeah, it does exist.
Would you? And I think my last question is, I think it might have been something that was mentioned in a past memo or presentation, because it sounds vaguely just familiar in my mind, and that is, do all cities operate a cost sort of cost neutral or cost recovery sort of model as it relates to the policing, if you will, of this industry?
No, I think it depends on your city how you want to do it. Our city modeled it after 100% cost recovery. I don't believe all cities are, even the cities in the chart, I don't believe all of them have 100% cost recovery. That's just what their city chose to do. Again, this industry does pay a 10% tax. It varies depending on what they're doing, but for the most part for retail. And it is a $15 million plus revenue stream for the general fund. So our city could choose to adopt a different model rather than just reducing the staffing level that's regulating. They could choose to pull it and not have it 100% cost recovery.
Okay, all right. Again, it goes back to us creating the rules and the decisions that were made a while ago, and that's sort of what carries the day at the present time. Okay, all right, okay. So I'm not going to make a motion. I don't think it's customary for the chair to make a motion, but I will just say that obviously I think every, I feel like we've been in this chamber all day, but we have. But every member of the committee has commented, and I forget what Brown Act I'm in as it relates to cannabis, and I know there's other members that are not on this committee that have expressed interest in the topic. And so I would say anyone that makes the motion, if you can maybe cross-reference this to a future council meeting, I think that would be helpful, so that way the whole council can chime in. Obviously, there's interest in exploring sort of how this works and how it can change or evolve. And so I think that would be helpful. And Lee, maybe to get your thoughts, similar to the card room discussion, this may have, depending on what the council decides to do, may have budgetary implications. Is it possible or worthwhile to bring, to whoever makes the motion to say, bring this back, say, before the end of March, or, you know, in some sort of time frame?
Yeah, I think that would be good timing, and if it's just a cross-reference, it's pretty easy for us to move it along. So within the next few meetings, we can find an agenda that has appropriate room and put it on.
Yeah, okay. I would just, whoever makes the motion, maybe by the end of March or March sometime, just to give this some time to develop a little bit. So
Chair,
I'll stop talking.
I'm willing to make it, accept the staff report, refer this item to full council in March, 30 days.
Okay. All right. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Did you have more comments, Councilmember Torres? I see your hand. No, your buttons. That was to, okay. All right, okay. Any more thoughts? If not, we'll take a vote. Thank you. And it's unanimous? Okay, wonderful. And then we'll go, thank you so much, Wendy, Sergeant Woolsey. Appreciate it. We'll go on to open forum. Do we have any?
We have no public comment.
No public comment? Okay. Thank you so much. Meeting's adjourned. Have a nice day.